Material. The car chase. In action movies, the chase sequence makes use of the same materials: crates of fruit, cardboard boxes, and glass, visual indicators of speed and motion, to enhance the dramatic effect. Could these materials be so heavily associated with the action of car chases that they can represent high-speed collision without the car, without moving? This is Rembrandt's The Night Watch, painted in 1642. With a long tradition of Dutch militia paintings, what's unusual here is the triumphal arch. Painted in the style of a history painting, Rembrandt has chosen to depict the sitters in action within a staged environment, the strongest feature of which is a large arch made of stone. Stone arches, or triumphal arches, have been established in Italian heroic painting to denote victory. Celebrating their success, a victorious company built a victory arch. But the Civic Guard, being the Dad's Army of Holland, never saw battle, and so never had a triumph to celebrate. Amsterdam was a city of wood and brick, with few buildings higher than 4 stories, but this arch is made of stone. It's easier to build an arch with stone rather than brick. There was a very strong local precedent, fresh in the minds of Rembrandt's primary audience, the Amsterdam community. The triumphal visit of Marie de Medici 4 years earlier, in 1638, for which Amsterdam was filled with triumphal arches. The arches were erected for the occasion and were therefore temporary, designed and built of wood and wrapped in cloth, painted to imitate stone. Is Rembrandt suggesting a false heroism? Are the Civic Guard celebrating a fake victory? Rembrandt had already used architecture to comment on the character of a sitter, the portrait of Andreas de Graaf, which he refused to pay for. Many people have speculated as to why. Some say it was de Graaf's wife who refused the painting, as it depicted him as an unsteady drunk. But the scene is very specific. The heavily studied door and the Roman bust on the left have been recognised to be the features of a well-known brothel in Prinsengracht. Velázquez The Spinners, housed in the Prado, Madrid. In the background, Velázquez has painted a tapestry of a painting, Titian's composition for The Rape of Europa. But it isn't Titian's version. It's a Rubens copy of a Titian, copied again by Velázquez through the medium of tapestry. Why tapestry? The original title of The Spinners was The Tale of Arachne, a mythological tale about a mortal who challenged the goddess Athena to a weaving contest. Arachne wins, and Athena in her rage transforms her into a spider, for daring to challenge her authority. Rubens didn't copy Titian as a student. He started making copies of his work at the age of 57, as a kind of challenge to the authority of the old master. Is Velázquez using the tale of Arachne with his woven copy to suggest a challenge to the authority of his predecessors? He did something similar previously in The Surrender of Breda. In the bottom right-hand corner, he has painted a trompe-l'oeil piece of paper, as if stuck on the surface of the painting, a well-known device used by painters such as El Greco for painters to sign their work. But Velázquez hasn't signed his paper, as if to say, who else could have painted this? At the end of World War II, German soldiers were ordered to hand in their helmets. As there was a metal shortage, the helmets had holes drilled into them, or handles attached to create colanders and saucepans, and were resold in department stores across Europe. Gas mask containers transformed into milk jugs. Domestic objects have often been associated with war. In the 17th century, Dutch painting was predominantly still life, despite them being at war for most of the century. Matisse, during World War I, painted a copy of Dutch de Heem's Le Désert, and Luc Tuymans' still life, painted for the 2002 Documenta, was presented amongst politically charged images relating to 9/11. A representation of a thing by its opposite. The everydayness of horror. Science fiction made use of the horror in the everyday in the 1950s, strongly reflecting the political fear of the times. The unseen enemy, communism.
How is he different?
That's just it. There is no difference you can actually see. He looks, sounds, acts, and remembers like Uncle Ira.
Then he is your Uncle Ira. Can't you see that? No matter how you feel, he is.
But he isn't. There's something missing. He's been a father to me since I was a baby. Always when he talked to me, there was a special look in his eye. That look's gone.
What about memories? There must be certain things that only you and he would know about.
Oh, there are. I've talked to him about them. He remembers them all down to the last small detail, just like Uncle Ira would. But Miles, there's no emotion. None. Just the pretense of it. The words, the gesture, the tone of voice, everything else is the same, but not the feeling. Memories or not, he isn't my Uncle Ira.
Wilma, I'm on your side. My business is people in trouble, and I'm going to find a way to help you. Now, no one could possibly impersonate your Uncle Ira without you or your Aunt Alida or even me seeing a million little differences. I want you to realize that. Think about it. And then you'll know that the trouble is inside you.
Nixon and Khrushchev. These are the historic, almost unprecedented scenes from the American National Exhibition in Moscow. Whatever is to follow here may be important too, but for raw news interest, it is the pre-opening inspection by the American Vice President and the Soviet Premier, which will be...
In 1959, America and Russia hosted national exhibitions of each other's innovations. Moscow went first, displaying their developments in heavy industry and rocket science. When it was America's turn, they couldn't compete. So instead, they showed their beautiful kitchens.
Sparring on economics, war and peace, and relative merits of the two world systems.
The domestic as weapon. Baking tray spacesuit. Ice cube tray control panel.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, drop.
Class Oldenburg's ray gun wing. Everyday objects that take the form of a ray gun. The fear in the everyday. This is the Prussian National Monument in Berlin, erected for fighters of the Liberation Wars. Made in the Gothic style of cast iron, it was coated in a green anti-rust paint, the newest innovation of the time, that was later used to coat all of the German tanks dispatched in World War I. Monument as military threat. Paint can have specific meaning. The Virgin Mary, for instance, doesn't wear blue because of any clothing she owned, but because lapis was the most expensive pigment as it could only be found in Afghanistan. Madonna blue is the colour of respect and glorification. John Martin was widely criticised for his use of blue because it was too artificial. But he never went to art school. He trained as a painter of plates and transferred his skills to painting, taking the strong blue enamel of plate decoration and applying it to the skies in his paintings. Steve McQueen's Illuminaire. Filmed on his camera phone, Steve McQueen wanted to capture the moment the light of the news of the declaration of war in Afghanistan flooded over his body. The Afghanistan light is lapis blue. On the specifics of light, Yves Delarue wanted to express his opinion that the only churches in America are banks. The way he showed this was by filming the interior of a bank in the manner of a church, with the light falling from high above pooling on the floor at regular intervals, as it does through the specific architectural layout of a church. This is the nativity scene, always painted with light emitting from the centre. The British artist Joseph Wright of Derby painted the Industrial Revolution, with the same light always emitting from the centre, as if to suggest a birth or awakening, likened to that of the birth of Christianity. A barbecue turned into a light, lighting the American dream. The light emitted is specific to the object that creates it. Vermeer's light always comes from the left, 4.5 feet from the ground. Space. This is where I grew up. 1990s Hatfield, England. An abandoned airfield turned into World War II France. This is Berlin. Throughout my childhood, I thought this meant that there was an identical town to the one I lived in somewhere else in the world. The first town twinning was between Coventry and Stalingrad, due to their similar size and shared industrial character, and their shared experience of severe bombing during World War II. Walter Benjamin says that being rude to pry into a person's character, it would surely be acceptable to ask if they had a sibling, and through understanding their character, it might be possible to understand something of the nature of the stranger. Could the substitution of one place for another in film tell us something more about the place it represents? Hitchcock's Vertigo used the iconic Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. This is the same bridge, but in Lisbon. On the steps of the Lisbon Aquarium, chewing gum looks like a seashell. In the same space, things become about each other. While in the National Gallery looking at Titian's Bacchus and Ariadne, I observed a woman in blue. The triangular arrangement of blue in the painting, extended to the stranger, made me connect everything in the room that was blue with the painting. The blue things in the space united. All the blues became about the blue of the painting.
Where are the belts for this dress? Why is no one ready?
Here. It's a tough call. They're so different.
Something funny?
No, nothing's, it's just that both those belts look exactly the same to me. I'm still learning about this stuff and,
This stuff? Oh, okay. I see. You think this has nothing to do with you. You go to your closet and you select, I don't know, that lumpy blue sweater, for instance, because you're trying to tell the world that you take yourself too seriously to care about what you put on your back. But what you don't know is that that sweater is not just blue. It's not turquoise. It's not lapis. It's actually cerulean. And you're also blithely unaware of the fact that in 2002, Oscar de la Renta did a collection of cerulean gowns. And then I think it was Yves Saint Laurent, wasn't it, who showed cerulean military jackets? I think we need a jacket here. And then cerulean quickly showed up in the collections of 8 different designers. And then it filtered down through the department stores and then trickled on down into some tragic casual corner where you no doubt fished it out of some clearance bin. However, that blue represents millions of dollars and countless jobs. And it's sort of comical how you think that you've made a choice that exempts you from the fashion industry when in fact you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room. From a pile of stuff.
Superman changed his blue. When chroma key was invented, it was blue screen, not green screen, that stood in for any imaginable location. When Superman needed to fly, he disappeared into the location, so his blue got lighter. And then green screen was invented, so he could go back to his signature colour. Burger King has long had vertical red flags at their restaurants. The building that housed the power station for the Nuremberg rallies is now a Burger King, with its red flags becoming about something else. Walter Benjamin said that in the arcades, a sweet shop next to a shoe repair made the laces look like licorice. The remainder of the ghetto wall in Krakow. Whilst it was being built, the Jewish residents said the wall resembled tombstones. The masses of Auschwitz. Glasses. Shoes. Suitcases. Audio guides. This is Humphrey Jennings' Listen to Britain, a wartime propaganda film. In montage shots from inside a room, we see first half a dozen helmets to the right, then half a dozen bare heads to the right, then a statue of Charles I, who was beheaded. A room about the vulnerability of heads. Caravaggio painted Conversion on the Way to Damascus for the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo, knowing it would be hung to the right of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary by Carracci, who he hated and sought to outdo. He designed his painting so that a large horse's bottom would be facing the work of Karachi.
Pan wpadł do wody, to by pan jednak popłynął.
A husband and a younger man compete to impress the wife swimming behind them. A love triangle. The husband's arm literally forms a triangle through which we see the woman causing it. Here we see a couple framed by their environment, seen through the machines in the factory that they own. Alfred Hitchcock made Rear Window, a film, about a voyeur watching his neighbours. The windows through which he sees them are designed to match the aspect ratio of cinema and television screens. For the final scene of Psycho, where Norman is subsumed by his mother, Saul Bass drew from art historical mothers, Whistler's mother, and composed the room so that an air vent would be in the place of the painting behind Whistler's mother. This would have been to the right of Norman, but the shot was not used.
It's sad when a mother has to speak the words that condemn her own son. But I couldn't allow them to believe that I would commit murder. They'll put him away now, as I should have, years ago. He was always bad, and in the end he intended to tell them I killed those girls and that man, as if I could do anything except just sit and stare, like one of his stuffed birds. Well, they know I can't even move a finger, and I won't. I'll just sit here and be quiet, just in case they do suspect me. They're probably watching me. Well, let them see what kind of a person I am. I'm not even going to swat that fly. I hope they are watching. They'll see, and they'll know, and they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
Claes Oldenburg's unmade JFK monument was to be the exact size of the Statue of Liberty, inverted to be underground. The American dream turned upside down. Daniel Libeskind designed the lightning bolt shape of the Jewish Museum in Berlin by shattering a Star of David and reassembling the fragments to represent the destruction of a race. The architects that designed the National Museum of Australia wanted to comment on the treatment of the native Aborigines by the white settlers. So they designed the wing that was to house their artefacts as a replica of Libeskind's lightning bolt, drawing a parallel between the traumas of two races in space. Converse Extra Special Value was painted in 1985, at the same time Warhol, a Catholic, was painting his Last Supper series, to which it bears a resemblance. Firstly, it is the same size as an altarpiece, with the bold star on the central axis. The number 12 is also a prominent feature, like the 12 apostles. The word converse has in itself religious connotations: to converse, to convert, commune, and communion. At the gallery opening of the Last Supper series, Warhol wore Converse All-Stars. The permeation of one thing by another. Cézanne once read a line from Balzac's The Magic Skin that describes a tablecloth as white as a layer of freshly fallen snow. To which he added, "Throughout my youth I wished to paint that tablecloth of freshly fallen snow." Cézanne liked to paint mountains, a particular mountain, Mont Sainte-Victoire, near his studio. But he didn't only paint the mountain as landscape. In the studio, he folded and shaped the tablecloth in his still lifes to conform exactly to the peaks and lines of Mont Sainte-Victoire. This still life is believed to be a plan for a landscape, like Poussin modelled his in clay. Here, the composition is mirrored, the pine tree and the flowers, the tablecloth and the mountain, the dense block of colour in the background and the sky, even the shapes and tones of the fruit and the vegetation in the landscape. The domestic becomes a metaphor for the immensity of the world. Form. The Russian theatre practitioner Vsevolod Meyerhold invented biomechanics, a theory that rather than emotions creating gestures, the study and control of gestures could create emotions. An idea that has reappeared recently.
We smile when we feel happy, but also when we're forced to smile by holding a pen in our teeth like this, it makes us feel happy. When it comes to power, it also goes both ways. So when you feel powerful, you're more likely to do this, but it's also possible that when you pretend to be powerful, you are more likely to actually feel powerful. We know that our minds change our bodies, but is it also true that our bodies change our mind? So what happens, okay, you take a role change, what happens if you do that at a really minimal level, like this tiny manipulation, this tiny intervention? For 2 minutes you say, I want you to stand like this, and it's going to make you feel more powerful. So this is what we did. We decided to bring people into the lab and run a little experiment, and these people adopted for 2 minutes either high power poses or low power poses. They come in, they spit into a vial. We, for 2 minutes, say, you need to do this or this. We then ask them, how powerful do you feel on a series of items? And then we give them an opportunity to gamble. And then we take another saliva sample. Here's what we find on testosterone. High power people experience about a 20% increase, and low power people experience about a 10% decrease. Here's what you get on cortisol. High power people experience about a 25% decrease, and the low power people experience about a 15% increase. So it seems that our nonverbals do govern how we think and feel about ourselves. So also our bodies change our minds.
Joshua Reynolds was a prolific portrait painter of the upper classes in 18th century British society. He elevated the status of his sitters, attributing qualities to them by depicting them with the poses and gestures of the gods and goddesses of antiquity, replicating them so closely that he was often accused of plagiarism. Gesture as character. Rubens used the statue of the Borghese warrior as inspiration for his depiction of Mercury and Argus, to capture the anger and aggression of Mercury. Velázquez did something very different. In his depiction of Mercury and Argus, both men are seen calmly sitting, overlapping each other. Velázquez took the archetypal gesture of fate from the statue The Dying Gaul, but rather than using the pose for one of the figures, he split it between the two, the legs of one and the arms of the other, suggesting that Mercury and Argus both share their eventual fate. In this episode of the spy program Burn Notice, a retired spy has his long-term friend and collaborator Sam kidnapped. The kidnapper calls the spy and requests a ransom. Before paying, the spy asks for proof of life. When the kidnapper takes a photo of Sam, he strikes a pose. Recognizing the gesture, the spy looks through photo albums to find where he has seen it before. A photo taken before an ambush. Sam approximates the gesture as his hands are restrained. The way the glass of this lamp approximates the brass. The gesture equals ambush. Daniel Libeskind designed the World Trade Center replacement, the Freedom Tower, to mirror and approximate the gesture of the Statue of Liberty, arm thrust in the air, the archetypal image of freedom. Degas took the gesture of his umbrellas from the broken lances in Uccello's Battle of San Romano. Is this the failure of the bourgeoisie? The peace symbol, designed by Gerald Holtham, was taken from the iconic gesture of despair, the central figure in Goya's 3rd of May, a desperate plea to stop violence, inverted to match the semaphore N and D for nuclear disarmament. Paintings of the Madonna and Child always depict Jesus vertically, as if standing, rather than horizontally, as a baby would usually be held, to symbolise the man that he would become and his future crucifixion. That's how we know these paintings by Matisse are of the Madonna and Child, even without any colour, facial features or setting. Can an object become something other than what it is if you change its pose? A blue form, slightly curved at the edges, roughly the distance from my knee to my ankle in length. Horizontally, a mudguard. Vertically, a shin pad. Bastian Adder's I'm Too Sad to Tell You has been seen as religious in tone, possibly representing Jesus crying for the sins of humanity. Maybe the religious overtones come from its similarity to Carl Theodor Dreyer's depiction of Joan of Arc. Picasso's Guernica depicts a woman so saddened by the death of her child. She doesn't just cry. Her eyes change their form, becoming the shape of a tear. Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, a highly sexualized naked woman covering her breasts with her hand and her vagina with her hair. But the form the hair takes in its folds gesturalizes the vagina it conceals, and the sheet in the top corner being penetrated by a strand also echoes the sexual gesture. Bosch depicted a mussel shell to represent female genitalia. Diana and Her Companions, a very early Vermeer painting drawn from mythology. Vermeer had recently converted to Catholicism, banned in the Protestant Holland. The painting has distinctly Catholic elements concealed within it. The feet washing, and the cloth taking the form of a dove.